What would you do if someone secretly paid for your lunch every single Friday without ever telling you who they were? This is a story about quiet love, hidden admiration, and the moment silence finally found its voice. My name is John, and today I am going to narrate a love story that did not begin with "I love you," but with kindness, patience, and a secret every Friday at 1 o'clock.
In the busy city of Lagos, where cars moved slowly in traffic and tall office buildings touched the sky, there was a large company called Brightstone Finance. Inside that building, many people worked every day, typing on computers, answering phone calls, and rushing to meetings. Among them was a young woman named Amara Okafor, who was 29 years old and worked as an accountant in the company. Amara was known for her calm voice, her neat dressing, and her gentle smile that made people feel comfortable around her. Every morning, she arrived at the office before most people, carrying her small handbag and greeting the security guard with kindness. She loved numbers and enjoyed balancing accounts because it made her feel peaceful and organized. Her desk was always clean, her files were arranged properly, and she worked with focus and dedication. Even though she was serious about her job, she was warm and friendly to everyone around her. Every Friday, something special happened in the office. It was not written in the company rules, and no one announced it, but everyone knew that Friday was the day people relaxed a little more. Workers wore slightly brighter clothes, laughter filled the corridors, and during lunch break, many employees ordered food from a nearby restaurant called Golden Spoon. The food from Golden Spoon was always fresh and delicious, and Amara loved their jollof rice with grilled chicken and sweet plantains. One Friday afternoon, when the clock showed exactly 1 o'clock, Amara opened her purse to pay for her usual meal. She stood in line with her colleagues, chatting softly and smiling as she waited her turn. When she reached the front and told the restaurant attendant her name, the young man behind the counter looked at her and smiled politely. "Your meal has already been paid for," he said gently. Amara blinked in surprise because she was sure she had not paid for anything yet. She laughed softly and shook her head, thinking there must be a mistake. She checked her phone quickly to see if money had been removed from her account, but nothing had changed. She looked back at the attendant and asked him kindly if he was certain. "Yes, ma," he replied. "It was paid just a few minutes ago." Amara felt confused, but also curious. She turned around slowly to look at her colleagues, wondering if one of them had played a small joke on her. Some of them were busy collecting their own meals, while others were laughing and talking about weekend plans. No one seemed to be paying attention to her. She smiled politely and thanked the attendant, then carried her plate back to her desk. As she sat down to eat, she could not stop thinking about what had happened. She asked her closest colleague, a cheerful woman named Tolu, if she knew anything about it. Tolu raised her eyebrows in surprise and said she had not paid for anything. She even teased Amara gently, saying maybe someone had a secret crush on her. Amara laughed it off and said it was probably just an error. But when the next Friday came, something even more surprising happened. Again, at exactly 1 o'clock, when she went to pay for her lunch, the attendant smiled and told her the same words. "Your meal has already been paid for." This time, Amara felt her heart beat a little faster. It was no longer a small mistake because it had happened twice. She looked around more carefully, observing every face in the restaurant area. She saw managers discussing reports, junior staff checking their phones, and some people laughing loudly. Yet no one looked like they were waiting for her reaction. No one winked at her. No one stepped forward to claim responsibility. She carried her food back to her desk once again, but this time her thoughts were deeper. Who would do something like this without saying a word? Why would someone choose to stay hidden instead of simply telling her how they felt? She felt a mixture of confusion and quiet excitement, like a child trying to solve a gentle mystery. As she slowly ate her meal, she noticed something else. Across the office floor, in the corner near the servers and computer cables, sat Daniel Adeyemi, the quiet IT specialist of the company. Daniel was 31 years old and known for fixing computers quickly and speaking very little. He wore simple shirts, kept his hair neat, and usually focused on his work without joining office gossip. At that moment, he seemed to be looking at his screen very carefully, almost too carefully, as if he did not want to look anywhere else. Amara did not think much of it. Daniel had always been quiet and respectful. Still, something about the silence in the room felt different. It was as if someone was watching her happiness from a distance, but did not want to be seen. When the workday ended and Amara stepped outside into the warm Lagos evening, she found herself smiling softly. The golden sun was setting, and the air felt gentle against her skin. She could not explain why, but the simple act of someone caring enough to pay for her lunch without asking for attention made her heart feel warm. She did not know who the secret admirer was. She did not know why they chose to hide. But deep inside, a small part of her was already looking forward to the next Friday. And somewhere in that same building, someone else was also counting the days. The following week passed slowly for Amara Okafor, even though she tried her best to focus on her work, as she always did. Every morning she arrived early at Brightstone Finance, greeted everyone with her gentle smile, arranged her files neatly, and checked the company accounts with great care. She told herself that the paid lunches on Friday were probably nothing serious, maybe just a kind mistake or a small office game that would soon stop. Yet, as the days moved from Monday to Tuesday and then to Wednesday, she found herself thinking about it more often than she expected. On Thursday afternoon, while reviewing a long report, her mind wandered for a short moment. She wondered who would quietly pay for her meal twice without saying a word. It did not feel like a prank because there was no laughter, no teasing, and no strange behavior afterward. Everything felt calm and serious, almost thoughtful. The person had paid and disappeared like a soft breeze that touches your face and goes away without being seen. When Friday finally arrived, Amara felt something different in her heart. She tried to ignore the small excitement building inside her, but it was there. She dressed a little more carefully that morning, choosing a light blue blouse and a black skirt that matched perfectly. She told herself she was only dressing nicely because it was the end of the week. But deep down, she knew she was curious. At exactly 1 o'clock, she stood up from her chair, picked up her purse, and walked toward the restaurant area with steady steps. Her heart was calm, yet alert. The office was lively as usual. People were laughing, talking about weekend plans, and sharing jokes. The air smelled like fresh rice and grilled chicken from Golden Spoon. When it was her turn at the counter, she spoke gently as always. "1 jollof rice with grilled chicken, please." The attendant looked at her, and before she could even open her purse, he smiled in a familiar way. "Your meal has already been paid for." Amara felt her breath pause for a second. It had happened again, not once, not twice, but now 3 times. There was no doubt anymore. This was not an accident. This was a pattern. She slowly turned her head and looked around more carefully than before. Her eyes moved from one face to another, studying expressions. Some co-workers were busy with their phones, some were laughing loudly, some were deep in conversation, but no one showed any sign of secret pride or hidden joy. As she walked back to her desk, holding her plate, she felt warmth spreading in her chest. It was not just about the money for the food. She could easily afford her lunch. It was about the intention behind it. Someone cared enough to do something kind again and again without asking for praise or attention. That afternoon, she decided to ask more questions, but in a calm and gentle way. She began casually talking to different co-workers during small conversations. She asked Tolu again, who laughed and insisted she knew nothing. She asked one of the managers jokingly if he was secretly sponsoring lunches, and he smiled in confusion, saying he had no idea what she was talking about. Then she passed by the IT section, where Daniel Adeyemi was sitting at his desk, adjusting some cables and typing quietly. She stopped near him because her computer had been slightly slow earlier that week. "Daniel, please can you check my system later?" she asked politely. Daniel looked up at her for a brief moment. His eyes were calm but slightly nervous, as if he had been thinking deeply before she arrived. He nodded gently. "Yes, I will check it this afternoon," he said in his soft voice. Amara thanked him and turned to leave. As she walked away, she noticed something small but interesting. Daniel avoided looking directly at her again. His focus stayed on his computer screen, and his fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. It was not strange behavior because Daniel was always quiet. Yet today, something felt slightly different. It was almost as if he was hiding something, not in a bad way, but in a careful way. When she returned to her seat, she began to observe more closely. Not openly, not suspiciously, but gently. She noticed that every Friday at exactly 12:45, Daniel would stand up and walk out of the office for a few minutes before lunch officially began. She had never paid attention to that before because everyone moved around during that time. Now she noticed it clearly. She did not want to jump to conclusions. She did not want to imagine things that were not true. But the small details were beginning to connect slowly, like tiny pieces of a puzzle that were forming a soft picture. As the afternoon sun shone through the office windows, Amara leaned back in her chair and smiled to herself. She did not feel afraid. She did not feel uncomfortable. Instead, she felt curious and gently happy. Someone was consistent. Someone was thoughtful. Someone was watching her from a distance with quiet admiration. And for the first time since the mysterious Fridays began, Amara realized something important. This was no longer just a surprise. It was a silent story unfolding. And she was ready to find out who was writing it. After the third Friday passed and the pattern became clear, something small but noticeable began to change inside the office. Amara had tried to keep the paid lunches quiet at first, but offices are places where small stories grow very fast. People notice things. People talk. And soon the mystery of her Friday meals became a soft topic of conversation among her colleagues. On Monday morning, as Amara arranged her files and prepared her weekly reports, she could hear two co-workers whispering gently behind her. They were not saying anything unkind. In fact, their voices carried excitement, like children discussing a secret treasure. "I think it is the manager," one of them said quietly. "No, it cannot be him," the other replied. "He would never stay silent like that. He likes attention too much." Amara pretended not to hear, but she smiled slightly. She did not feel embarrassed. Instead, she felt curious. It was strange how something as simple as a paid lunch could create such interest. By Tuesday afternoon, more people had started making guesses. During tea break, Tolu leaned closer to Amara and spoke softly with a playful grin. "Amara, you cannot hide this from me. Someone in this office likes you very much. Look at you, calm and beautiful every day. Of course someone will admire you." Amara laughed gently and shook her head. She tried to appear relaxed, but her heart felt warm hearing those words. She was not used to being the center of attention. She preferred numbers and balance sheets to gossip and guessing games. Still, deep inside, she wondered who it could be. On Wednesday, something interesting happened. As she walked toward the printer to collect some documents, she noticed two junior staff members watching her from a distance. When she looked at them directly, they quickly looked away and began talking about something else. She felt like she was inside a quiet story that everyone else was trying to understand. But the most interesting part was not the whispers or the guessing. It was Daniel. Daniel Adeyemi, the quiet IT specialist, seemed more nervous than usual whenever Friday was mentioned. If someone joked about the secret admirer, he would suddenly find something important to fix on his computer. If someone laughed and asked who the mystery person might be, he would lower his head slightly and continue typing. Amara began to observe him more carefully, but not in a suspicious way. She simply noticed small things. For example, every Friday around 12:45, Daniel would leave his desk for about 10 minutes. He would walk out calmly, holding his phone, and return just before lunch officially began. At first, this meant nothing, but now it felt like an important detail. On Thursday afternoon, as Amara was reviewing a financial report, her computer suddenly froze. The screen stopped moving and she sighed softly. She picked up her phone and sent a short message to the IT department asking for assistance. Within minutes, Daniel appeared beside her desk. "Let me check it," he said in his calm voice. He bent slightly to look at the screen, his hands moving carefully over the keyboard. Amara watched him from the corner of her eye. He looked focused, serious, and gentle. There was something peaceful about the way he worked. He did not rush. He did not complain. He simply fixed things quietly. "Thank you, Daniel," she said kindly after the computer began working again. He nodded without looking at her fully. "You are welcome," he replied. For a brief second, their eyes almost met. But Daniel quickly looked back at the screen, as if afraid of something. Not afraid in a bad way, but shy. Very shy. That evening, as Amara packed her bag to leave the office, she paused for a moment. She looked across the room at Daniel's desk. He was still working, his face calm, his attention fixed on his monitor. The office lights reflected softly on his glasses. Could it be him? The thought came gently into her mind like a small candle lighting up in the dark. She did not want to assume anything. She did not want to create a story in her head without proof. But her heart felt a quiet pull in that direction. When Friday arrived again, the office atmosphere felt different. It was as if everyone was secretly waiting to see what would happen. Some co-workers watched her from the corner of their eyes as she stood up at 1 o'clock and walked toward the restaurant area. Daniel was at his desk, but at 12:45, just like the other Fridays, he quietly stood up and walked out. Amara noticed. She did not follow him. She did not say anything. She simply observed. When she reached the counter and ordered her usual meal, the attendant smiled warmly. "Your meal has already been paid for." Her heart beat softly but clearly. As she turned to walk back, she glanced toward the office entrance. Daniel was just returning, holding his phone in his hand. Their eyes met for one small moment this time, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not a confession, not a promise, just a quiet connection that felt gentle and real. The whispers in the office continued. But now Amara was no longer just confused. She was beginning to understand that sometimes the loudest feelings are carried in the quietest hearts. Daniel Adeyemi had always been a quiet man, even before he joined Brightstone Finance. At 31 years old, he had already learned that not every feeling needs to be spoken loudly for it to be real. Some feelings grow slowly, softly, like a small seed planted in the soil that no one sees, yet it continues to grow every day. From the very first week Amara Okafor joined the company 3 years ago, Daniel had noticed her. Not because she was loud, not because she tried to get attention, but because she was calm, focused, and kind in a way that felt rare. She greeted everyone politely, even the cleaners. She thanked him every time he fixed her computer, even for small things. She never spoke harshly. She carried herself with quiet confidence. To Daniel, that kindness was beautiful. At first, it was only admiration. He would see her walk past his desk with her files neatly arranged, and he would think, "She works very hard." When she laughed softly with her friends during lunch, he would feel happy just hearing her voice. He never imagined that one day he would be the one secretly paying for her meals. But life has a way of deepening simple feelings. Daniel had once cared deeply for someone years ago. He had tried to speak his heart openly, but things did not work out. Since then, he had promised himself that he would never rush his feelings again. He would never push himself into someone's life if he was not sure he belonged there. So when his admiration for Amara slowly became something stronger, he kept it to himself. He told himself she would never notice someone like him. He was the IT man who fixed cables and solved software problems. He was not loud. He was not flashy. He did not drive the newest car. He did not tell big stories in meetings. He simply worked quietly behind the scenes. But his heart did not remain quiet. Every Friday, when he saw her standing in line for lunch, something warm would move inside him. It was not about the money. It was about the small joy he could give her. The first time he paid for her meal, his hands were slightly shaking as he made the transfer on his phone. He did not attach his name. He did not leave a message. He simply told the restaurant attendant to mark it under her name. When he saw her surprise from a distance, his heart felt light. She looked around, confused but smiling. That smile alone made him feel as if he had done something meaningful. He did not want praise. He did not want attention. He just wanted to care for her quietly. The second Friday, he hesitated. He told himself maybe he should stop. Maybe it was foolish. But when he imagined her standing at the counter and being told her meal was paid for, he felt that same warmth again. So he did it. By the third Friday, it had become something important to him. Not a game, not a trick, but a gentle routine that connected his heart to hers in a silent way. Yet each time the office began whispering about the mystery admirer, Daniel felt nervous. He did not want her to feel uncomfortable. He did not want her to think someone was playing with her emotions. He admired her too much to treat her lightly. On Thursday night before the fourth Friday, Daniel sat alone in his small apartment. The room was simple but neat, just like his desk at work. He thought deeply about what he was doing. Was it fair to stay hidden? Was it kind to keep her guessing? Or was he only protecting himself from possible rejection? He looked at his phone and scrolled through his banking app, seeing the small payments he had made each Friday. They were not large amounts, but to him they carried big meaning. He whispered softly to himself, "I just want her to smile." That was all. He did not dream of dramatic confessions. He did not imagine grand romantic gestures. He simply wanted to show care in the only way he felt brave enough to do. The next morning, when he arrived at the office, he noticed Amara was wearing a soft cream blouse and her hair was tied neatly behind her head. She looked peaceful as always. When she greeted him, her voice was warm. "Good morning, Daniel." "Good morning," he replied gently, hoping his voice did not reveal the feelings inside him. At 12:45, just like every Friday, he stood up quietly and walked outside the building. The sun was bright and the air was warm. He opened his phone and made the payment once again. His fingers moved slowly but steadily. As he walked back inside, his heart beat a little faster than usual. He wondered if today would be different. He wondered if she would finally discover the truth. When 1 o'clock arrived and she stood at the counter, he watched from a distance, pretending to adjust something on his screen. He saw the attendant speak to her. He saw her pause. He saw her turn slowly. For a brief second, their eyes met. And in that second, Daniel felt something shift. It was as if she was beginning to see him, not as the quiet IT man in the corner, but as someone connected to the mystery. He quickly looked down at his computer, but inside his heart, something was shining softly. For 3 years, he had admired her in silence. Now, the silence was becoming a bridge, and he did not know how much longer he could stay hidden behind it. The week after that quiet eye contact felt different for both Amara and Daniel, even though nothing had been spoken between them. The office still looked the same. The computers still hummed softly. The phones still rang. People still moved from one desk to another with files in their hands. But inside Amara's heart, something had changed. She was no longer just curious about the secret admirer. She was now quietly waiting. On Monday morning, she found herself glancing toward the IT corner more often than usual. Daniel was there as always, focused on his work, typing carefully and speaking only when someone needed help. He looked the same as he always did, calm and simple. But every time their eyes almost met, he would look away gently, as if protecting something precious. Amara did not feel uncomfortable. Instead, she felt something soft and warm growing inside her. It was like when the sun slowly rises in the morning and fills a room with light without making any noise. She could not explain it clearly, but she felt connected to the mystery now. As the days moved forward, she noticed that Daniel was quieter than before. He seemed thoughtful. Sometimes he would stare at his computer screen without typing for a few seconds, as if he was thinking deeply about something. On Thursday evening, while packing her bag, Amara whispered to herself, "Tomorrow is Friday." She smiled without meaning to, but that same Thursday night, Daniel sat alone in his apartment again. He held his phone in his hand and looked at the payment history from the past Fridays. His heart felt restless. He asked himself a serious question. Was he being brave or was he hiding? He cared about Amara deeply, but he also knew that staying hidden forever would not build something real. Love, even gentle love, cannot stay in the shadows forever. It needs honesty. It needs light. For the first time since he began paying for her lunches, Daniel decided not to make the payment. Not because he did not care, not because his feelings had changed, but because he wanted to know something important. He wanted to know if it mattered to her. Friday morning arrived with bright sunshine. Amara dressed carefully again, choosing a soft pink blouse. She did not admit it to anyone, but her heart felt expectant. There was a small excitement inside her chest, like a quiet drum beating gently. The office felt lively as usual. People joked about weekend plans. Some talked about movies. Others discussed family visits. Amara worked carefully through her reports, but her eyes kept moving toward the clock. At 12:45, she noticed something. Daniel did not stand up. He remained seated at his desk, typing calmly. He did not pick up his phone. He did not walk outside. Amara felt a small confusion inside her. Maybe he would leave in a few minutes, she thought. But 12:50 passed, then 12:55. He did not move. At exactly 1 o'clock, she stood up slowly and walked toward the restaurant area. Her steps were steady, but her heart felt different. She told herself it did not matter. It was just lunch. She could pay for her own meal easily. When she reached the counter, she spoke softly as always. "1 jollof rice with grilled chicken, please." The attendant prepared her plate and then looked at her kindly. "That will be 2,500 naira." There was no smile of secret knowledge this time, no familiar sentence. Her meal had not been paid for. Amara felt something unexpected rise inside her. It was not anger. It was not disappointment in a dramatic way. It was a soft sadness. Like when you wait for the rain to fall on a hot day and the sky remains dry. She opened her purse and paid quietly. Her hands moved slowly. She told herself she should not feel this way. After all, she had never known who the person was. She had never asked for it. But still, the absence felt louder than the presence ever did. As she walked back to her desk with her plate, she glanced toward the IT section. Daniel was working quietly, his face calm, his eyes fixed on his screen. For a moment, their eyes met again. This time, the look was different. There was something gentle in his expression, something searching, as if he was asking a silent question. Amara sat down at her desk and began to eat, but the food did not taste the same. The office laughter sounded distant. The whispers about the mystery admirer were gone because nothing unusual had happened. But inside her heart, something had happened. She realized that the small Friday surprise had become important to her. It was not about the meal. It was about being remembered. It was about someone thinking of her at exactly 1 o'clock every week. And now that gentle attention was missing. Across the room, Daniel watched her carefully without making it obvious. He saw the small change in her face. He saw the way she moved more slowly than usual. His heart tightened softly. He now had his answer. It mattered to her, and for the first time, Daniel understood that the quiet bridge between them was no longer one-sided. But he also knew something else. Silence had reached its limit. Soon one of them would have to speak.
And just like that, Friday came. But this time no one paid for her lunch. The silence felt different. It meant something. Was the secret over, or was the truth about to be revealed? Stay with me for part 2, because this story is just beginning.